Okay, that's fine. Perfectly fine. As long as, I guess the important thing is if we can all hear me, we're good to go. All right. I got my lucky person I could be looking at for the duration of our presentation so I could see my slides. Someone was asked the other day, is it easier to do this in person? And I said, I don't know, because I do feel like I'm in my own room talking to myself, and I do talk to myself a lot and everybody else. But when I'm around people, it's like, and I used to have like the whole everyone's face, and then I kind of like bring it down to like one face, maybe two. It just depends, but I don't know. It has its own rewards in it. I like how the Zooms have to be short, because you can't. I wouldn't personally sit in a Zoom for a whole day. That wouldn't happen. That just would be too much. All right, let's go ahead and get rolling. I'm gonna throw one more reminder out there just to make sure we get credit. I know the name in the corner has been our go-to, but I've also been using the chat as a double up since many of us have been sharing computers with multiple stuff going on, which is fine. I just want to cover all my bases and make sure that we get credit in some way or another. The Zoom is a whole new land of professional development that we're all trying to figure out. We've been talking a lot about reinforcement, and today we're really going to kind of dive into punishment a little bit deeper. Toward the end of last week, we kind of talked a little bit about punishment, and we brought up, that what it means and what punishment is, and all those great things. I found some great videos this morning. I'm really excited about sharing with you guys. I know I shared with some people either today or the day before about sensory extinction and masking. It's really, really cool, and this is the video where I got the light bulb idea from, and it's like 3 minutes, so I won't hold your attention for too long. And then we're going to review a little bit of punishment and reinforcement concepts along the way. This shouldn't be a long one. I don't want to spend forever on punishment, but I do want to remind everybody that, when it comes to using a strategy, we really want to look at reinforcement first. We want to reinforce the behavior first before we start really diving into punishment. And I'm not saying that we don't do punishment. I do punishment. I've done with my own kids. I will continue to do punishment. But we want to look at some reinforcement strategies as well. We're also going to talk about today the side effects of punishment. They're real. Aggression breeds aggression. I have no complaints how I was raised. I love my parents with all of my heart, but my dad was the Punisher, and he became very aversive to me because I always knew him as, I'm in trouble, there's my dad. And I just want us to kind of dive into that also today. When our kids always see someone when they always get in trouble, how that person always end up being. And it's not just our kids, it's also our daily relationships. Is there a person around the office that you avoid? There probably is a reason why. That's punishment. That's a little negative reinforcement, but there's always a reason why. When we look at punishment, we're also trying to decrease the behavior. We're also going to talk about today, when we always use that yelling and threatening and I'm going to get on to you. And if it actually, I got some people in the room. If it's working and if it's decreasing the behavior, then it's working. We're also going to talk about how the ethical guidelines of punishment. Not that punishment's unethical, because it's not unethical. It's not our go-to. And we should always team it up with something. We talked about extinction last week. If we're going to team up extinction, we're going to use it with something. Ignoring a problem doesn't go away. If my wife's mad at me and I ignore her over something, the problem isn't going to go away. If I ignore a bill collector, it isn't going to go away. So you have to add something with that strategy, just like punishment. Punishment has a lot of the same characteristics as reinforcement. You have your punishers, you have your reinforcers. Those things are a lot of the same. Some are conditioned and some are natural. So there's a lot of similarities today, a lot. I just want to kind of throw out there out in the front. I'm going to skip all this behavior specialist stuff. I don't even know why I would have it in there. I think it's just so I have it so far. I want to go ahead and just kind of, the last week, really start off with a little bit of a review. When we look at reinforcement, we're increasing behavior. We look at reinforcement as a whole. We're going to have positive reinforcement. We're adding something in hopes of increasing that behavior in the future. Negative reinforcement and punishment, they always get mistaken for each other because the word negative, well, negative doesn't mean bad. It doesn't mean you're in trouble. It just means you're taking away something. So positive means you're adding and negative means you're taking away. Then we're taking away something that increases that behavior. My favorite is that seatbelt thing in the car. I hate my buzzer that goes off in the car. It's loud, and I have that little warning light on my dashboard. I put my seatbelt on, and it goes away. And I'm going to keep doing that because it'll go away, and I have to wear it. I mean, we've had that seatbelt discussion, I think, several times in my Zooms, but we're doing something that I'm also going to keep doing. I take medicine for my blood pressure. I need my blood pressure not to go away, but to decrease. And I'm going to keep taking those medicines. I'm going to increase that in the future. So I'm still alive to this day to talk to you guys and hang out with you guys. Positive and negative both have an increase in the future. We also talked about how, we look at school suspension or sending a kid home. That's more negative reinforcement for us. I'm not in anybody's luck because I understand. I've told you before, I've been there. Things get out of hand. We have a lot of kids. Things get wacky. We need to do something. But we're getting rid of that aversive stimulus, that unpleasant thing, those unpleasant behaviors, which will increase our behavior in the future. If he didn't want to be there, then it's going to increase his behavior in the future. Next week, we'll dive into negative punishment. That's your timeout, your safe zone. You're pulling them away. Of course, you always want to have a safe center, no matter of what's going on. But that's when you're pulling them away from something. And negative punishment also has a lot of the same things as characteristics, I want to say. Because if negative punishment works, if they wanted to be there, they want to be in that situation, they want to be in that classroom. Negative reinforcement works if they didn't want to be. So those always get mixed up when it comes to punishment. And they definitely get mixed up when it comes to things that we do when we have things that we encounter. Negative reinforcement, like I said always before, there's two major side effects of negative reinforcement: escape and avoidance. If you really break it down, we said earlier, there are two basic things that everyone does. We want to get something and we want to get out of something. We have to figure out what it is. There's nothing wrong with token boards and penny boards and tabulators and all that stuff. There's nothing wrong at all. I love those suggestions. I love those ideas. But that's why we're doing a lot of the assessments, to figure out what do they want to get away from? What are they trying to get? And replace that undesired behavior, that behavior that drives us crazy, with an appropriate behavior. And if it doesn't work, then we'll find the right thing that does work. But our ultimate goal of reinforcement is to increase the behavior. When we avoid things daily, certain routes to work, certain people, certain coworkers, certain everything. I avoid my ex-wife. She's aversive. She's not a bad person. There's been so much unpleasantries over the years. It's just easy just to avoid contact and focus on my son. We do agree on one thing: our child. He is incredible. He's amazing. Yes, he sent me a letter yesterday too. Anyways, negative reinforcement, things we're trying to get rid of. We always try to get rid of headaches. We always try to get rid of the seatbelt buzzer. Hey, Mr. Cooper. Most often crying. We always have, screaming and crying and things like that. And we don't like it. I don't like it. And we try to get rid of those things. When it comes to my job, we have behaviors that we don't like, those unpleasant behaviors, those physical aggressions such as hitting, kicking, biting, whatever. We don't want those. We want to get rid of those things, which is completely understandable. We just have to get rid of them and try to increase that in the future. That's the ultimate goal. Here's another example of reinforcement. I know I'm overstating everything, but I want things to stick because these are important concepts. We are trying to increase behavior. Here's my example. I think I've already shared it here a second ago about, if we send someone home for having a bad day, if they didn't want to be in school, then that behavior will increase. If they're very disruptive and they're problematic, then we are going to increase our behavior in the future as well. There are lots of, I was having this conversation before I went to lunch. There are lots of staff that over the years, that's just been their go-to. and I'm not eating anybody's lunch because I've called mom, I've called dad, I've been there. Um, I have, but we also need to look at, you know, other ways of trying other ways again. But it all boils down to they want to be in that classroom, they want to be at school, they want to be there. Um, if the classroom's fun and inviting and structured and everything's a blast, then they're going to want to be there. They're making friends and all that stuff. They're going to want to be there. Um, just like centers. You know, you're mad at Johnny for doing something and you take him out of the center, negative punishment, and then his behavior doesn't decrease. Well, he wanted a break from his buddies. That was negative reinforcement. He wanted to get away from those guys. You just kind of helped him out a little bit. That's why it's really important to monitor our classroom and see what's going on. Negative reinforcement, like I said earlier, it's not a matter of good versus bad. Punishment's the same way. It's not a matter of good versus bad. I'm really excited we're jumping into punishment today because we all have this built-up concept, at least I do, speaking for me, that punishment is discipline. And that's how we handle things. We use strong punishment and discipline. Now, I'm not going to get into the ins and outs of different punishments and this and that. You know, I grew up with a spanking and it worked for me. I grew up with a stern voice and it worked for me. I grew up, not wanting to disappoint my parents and it worked for me. So I'm not going to, get into the whole debate today about what's this and what's this. I'm not getting there because I understand both sides of the argument. I really do. But we're not getting into good versus bad. We're just going to get into negative reinforcement. We're trying to get rid of that aversive stimulus, that unpleasant thing, but we're going to keep doing it because it worked. Versus punishment, we're going to get rid of that and it decreases the behavior. If I took away a PlayStation, if I took away your video game, I took away a certain toy, it's going to decrease in the future. I look at examples in my household. I constantly get on my 13-year-old for yelling at his video game. That's a reprimand. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It's effective punishment if it works. We take away his controller, we take away his video game because that's what he wants to be on a lot. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I tried these same things with my other child. Um, he misses out on certain things to work on certain behaviors and shape different behaviors, and that's been more successful. Sometimes kids don't want to miss out on things; they want to be a part of certain things. At least I do. When we look at punishment, punishment comes in two different types, just like reinforcement. It comes in positive and it comes in negative, just like reinforcement. A lot of this is like reinforcement. Positive punishment, we're adding something to decrease the behavior. Sound familiar? Negative punishment, we're taking away something to decrease behavior. The reinforcement and punishment have a lot in common. It took me forever to get that light bulb moment because, doing all my study, I'm like, I know what punishment is. I know what reinforcement is. Then you throw me negative reinforcement, I'm like, what? And then you throw in all this, I'm like, what? And that's why I really enjoyed the last several weeks. We slow down and really break it apart. So positive and negative, I'm adding and I'm taking away. But today, we're trying to decrease a behavior. Positive punishment, I'm administering something. Spanking, the parking ticket, the seatbelt ticket. I think Miss Hazel and I were talking about the other day. I got a seatbelt ticket and I made sure I put my seatbelt on after that. That decreased the behavior of not wearing the seatbelt. You get a speeding ticket, that decreases your speeding, at least for a while. Then you had that, resurgence, that recovery back to where it was before. But it stops it. It decreases the behavior. Negative punishment works just like before. We're taking you away. We're taking something out of it. That could be your timeout. That could be you're taking the driver license away from, take your car privileges away, PlayStation privileges away. Block center is not a good spot for you. I'm taking you out of the block center. But the key word is with negative punishment, they want to be there. They want that activity. We want our driver's license. We want those privileges. So if you take them out, that's why the behaviors will decrease. Doesn't always work in perfect theory because, like I said earlier, I have a teenager, just a brand new teenager, and we can all agree it doesn't always work in theory. But for the most part, when you have that consistency, anything works with consistency. Punishment. There's a lot of words happening on here on this page. I'm probably lost half of you, but for the most part, we're decreasing a behavior in the future. That's our goal. I mean, the only word I want you to see, that's why I kind of put it in bold print, was the word decrease. So that's all I'm worried about is decrease. Punishment is to decrease a behavior in the future. That's all our worry is. So the best thing with punishment is also to tag it with something else, another strategy, which we'll talk about in the future. Extinction. I want to throw that one more time again there. If I ignore a bill collector, will the bill disappear? No, it will not. If I ignore something, it will not just go away. So I have to pair it with something. If I ignore a bill collector, I better answer the phone one day and have a plan for how to pay that bill. If I ignore a problem behavior, you have a plan with a better replacement behavior. For example, we've been using it a lot. Child is, whatever, trying to get your attention. Say, hi, Patrick. He's still doing all that. Then he does that. Oh, hey, thanks. Thanks for saying hey. Good to see you, man. You're reinforcing what you want, and you're kind of blowing off what you didn't want. You're not blowing him off. You're just blowing that behavior off and really kicking in what you're looking for. I wish I could ignore things away. I wish. This is really cool. I'm not really a huge fan of these guys. I didn't watch every episode and all that stuff. But it kind of talks about punishment and negative reinforcement and all that stuff. And it was kind of neat how they looked at it. So I want to share that with you. It's a little short video.
Conditioning punishment. Maybe we can come up with punishment for straying off topic. Not getting to see you wins at pigeon ping pong comes to mind. Sidetracked.
Not bad. In medieval times, idle chatter was punished with a device called the scold's bridle. It's an iron cage that's locked around the head and pierces the tongue.
Only we had one.
Check Amazon.
Okay, so we agree. Whenever someone takes us off topic, they get their arm hair yanked off.
Let me let that happen, or the girl who does my eyebrows will think I've been cheating on her.
Now, one benefit of quantum coupling.
Well, no question. Who decides if someone's gone off topic?
I think it'll be pretty clear. If not, we'll take a vote. Oh, also.
Ow! I didn't vote.
We didn't have to. That was clearly a tangent. Now, come on, back to work. If we're leaning towards quantum coupling, then
You said quantum coupling. That made me think of the show Quantum Leap. That's a tangent, and it's your fault.
Ridiculous. Sheldon, I thought that is not a tangent.
Yeah, thank you. And now I owe you one.
That was your fault.
That is a lot of fair. And now I'm going to hear it from Jenny.
Everyone stop. This was a stupid idea. Negative reinforcement isn't working.
I think you mean positive punishment. Negative reinforcement is the removal of a positive stimulus. It's a common mistake.
Negative reinforcement is really wrong?
Well, it's used incorrectly all the time. Even Bill Murray makes that mistake in the first scene of Ghostbusters.
No way. Not Bill Murray. I'm studying the effect of negative reinforcement on ESP ability. Bill Murray did get it wrong. Jumped ahead of the statement, Marshall.
No!
Leonard's right. We can't just jump ahead. We have to watch the whole movie.
Yeah, I just thought it's hilarious because if you put, duct tape on your wrists and you pull, you're adding something to decrease that behavior. As crazy as that sounds, that's exactly what they were attempting to do. Kind of a recap. Once again, I like to review. We're positive. We're adding something. Punishment, now it's getting a little aversive, unpleasant. We're adding an unpleasant stimulus. They didn't like that duct tape being ripped off their hand. That was very unpleasant. And it was in hopes to decrease the behavior of the whatever comments. But it didn't work, so it wasn't effective. That was more positive punishment in that scene than anything else. And then we go to negative, we're also removing. We're removing. It's kind of flip-flop, though, on the punishment and reinforcement side now, because now it comes to negative reinforcement. We're getting rid of that aversive, unpleasant thing. And then with punishment, we're getting rid of what they wanted. That's why I kept trying to say it earlier. You know, if you pull a kid out of school, negative reinforcement, if he didn't want to be there, he'll continue that behavior. If he wants to be at school, then he'll decrease that behavior. Another demonstration with an arrow and some more words. And I want to put this down here too, just to kind of remind us, you know, and it really kind of hit home this week. You know, we're not looking for band-aids. We're not looking for quick fix. You know, in the end, we're really looking for those natural reinforcers, those natural punishers. Probably more natural reinforcers than punishers, but we're looking for natural things. I know I've said it several times, and it is kind of funny. You know, I actually got it from Dr. Greg Hanley. You know, we don't carry token boards in our back pocket and walk around and reinforce each other as adults. We don't. We have natural reinforcement, satisfaction of a good job, praise, specific praise. There are lots of things that we work for that are natural. You know, we go home. I mean, I don't get an allowance for doing chores, so there's a natural reinforcer in the house. Wish I can get an allowance. That'd be awesome, but I'm not gonna get an allowance. I guess bringing home a paycheck is enough. I don't know. This works, whatever. Move my positive and negative punishment. Once again, you know, threats are not a form of punishment. So if you're using threats, then that's not punishment. You're just using threats. Because the more threats you use and you don't follow through, you're not decreasing anything. You're just stating what you would want to do. And then after a while, the client picks up on it. Us adults pick up on things too. And we're like, okay, we don't do anything. Positive punishment it's always confused. Negative reinforcement, you know, the videos show that. They're always confused. They're always, you know, it has to be punishment. It has to be, it's all over the place. But the keys to identifying positive punishment and negative reinforcement is recognizing what they do on future behavior. What do they do in the future? Is it increasing behavior or is it decreasing behavior? I know I have some applied behavioral analysis words here, but in a nutshell, positive reinforcement, I had this aversive stimulus that the reprimand, a spanking, a parking ticket, a speeding ticket. It could be harsh work. It could be just, you know, your supervisor giving you a couple of words of advice. And that may be enough. I mean, they weren't being ugly. They were being supportive, but that was enough to decrease that behavior you were not supposed to do. They're not threats aren't forms of punishment. I can't say that enough. But when you do positive punishment, negative reinforcement, or any of these things, or positive reinforcement, you have to be consistent and you have to follow through. You also have to be mindful of behavior that you're trying to punish, the behavior you're trying to reinforce. You know, I know our classrooms get hectic. I know our classrooms get busy, and you know sometimes we miss it, and that's fine. But I know on an everyday scale, sometimes we miss it and we could have nailed it. I know as a father, there are a lot of times where I've missed it. You know, where, you know, I see my son every other weekend, and if I got on to him in the car and I punished him for what he did in the car 2 weeks later, am I really decreasing his behavior? I mean, if he just been great in the car ride on the way to see his mom and I just reinforce, is that behavior going to increase 2 weeks later? I mean, if I add a reinforcement 2 weeks later, what's going to happen? So, you know, that's been my big eye opener a lot. And I even told my wife a lot too, you know, and we punish him next weekend. You know, is it going to decrease his behavior? Is it going to stick? And a lot of times it does. Because my son really enjoys visiting. He really enjoys being up here. So a lot of those punishment forms, the taking away things, not so much positive punishment, but negative punishment has really been effective. I mean, there's a lot of things that he likes, a lot of things that he enjoys. And it also makes me decrease my behavior because when he goes without, I go without. Because I hate to do something without him because of the limited time that we do have together. Punishers and reinforcers are a lot alike. You know, reinforcers are those things that we want and we love and we're going to work for. You know, money's the best one. I think Cole's Cash, believe it or not, is another good one. I mean, we collect Cole's Cash and we turn it in for more stuff, aka backup reinforcers. So Cole's cash is a reinforcer, but if you flip it around and you think of the opposite of a reinforcer, what is the opposite of something that you want? Something that you don't want. So it's forget all the wording here. Stimulus change immediately follows the response and all that. It's the opposite of a reinforcer. It refers to something's going on toward that behavior. Just like we have unconditioned reinforcers, where we just know that we want to have. We were born wanting oxygen. We were born wanting food. We were born wanting shelter. Well, there's things that we're also born that we don't like. We don't like pain. We don't like certain smells. We don't like certain really, I don't want to say temperatures, because some people like it cold, some people like it hot. What about extreme hot? What about extreme cold? These are things that we were born with that we know that we don't like. There's a fancy word right here called phylogeny. I'll say it with confidence. And it just means that we were born with it. And there are a lot of things. I put physical restraint there because, we don't like pain. We don't like feeling hurt. We don't like feeling those certain things. So it's a Punisher, which is a big reason why we had our training for verbal intervention. Loss of bodily support, extreme muscular effort. There's just a lot of things that we just know. No one had to teach me. I just know I don't like. I guess broccoli would probably be my unconditioned Punisher. I don't like broccoli. It's just the smell and the whole thing, and no one ever taught me that. I don't want to be around it. Conditioned Punishers are the same thing. I add this at the bottom because I thought it was really funny. I was in a train the other day, kind of reviewing these terms, and I kept thinking, conditioned Punishers, conditioned reinforcers. Those are things that we've been conditioned, right? We learned. And it really kind of got me, when we pair something with something. Like if I pair this with praise and I take this away, that praise will work. That's a conditioned reinforcer. If I clap my hands every time I yell at you, well, here's a great example. If your cat gets on the table and he knocks off a pot and pan and it goes bam, that loud noise along with that part, now every time he hears a loud noise, he's probably going to he's going to be a little scared. That's a conditioned Punisher. I think about my dog, not that people we work with are animals or anything, but, this has been great. I have it up with my dog, but my dog has taught me a lot, really, to be honest with you. But when I say to my dog, Gracie, get down, I'm always slapping my legs. And get down, get down. So, and I'm in the backyard, I'm with her, and I'm petting her, I'm cutting the grass and all that. And then a lot of times I'll just I'll hit my legs, and she'll get down. That's conditioned. So there's a lot of things that we do, we just forget about, and I think I forgot about too. The book put in, the book I've been studying, it has electric shock and all that stuff, and we're not doing all that. That stuff gives ABA a bad name, to be honest. There is an institute in, I think, Boston. I'm not for sure. They did electric shock therapy, and there's other institutions that have too. And you're adding that shock, and it's decreasing the behavior in the future. A lot, and then you get in the whole this is where the whole ethical guidelines come in, the whole ethical argument. Is shocking somebody right? Is it, something we should be doing? And I'm going to say no. There's that whole moral dilemma of punishment. A harmful Punisher is also part of the BACB board for guidelines. Least harmful Punishers. Always go for reinforcers first. There are times we do use Punishers. I'm not saying we don't. I'm going to say it over and over again. But, shock. I mean, how y'all have the dog collar shock thing on your animal? I bet they don't like that at all. Does it work? We're adding something, and we're taking a behavior away. And what's funny is there's an acronym of all the different signs of positive punishment, and in there is shock. And I pulled it out today And when we have our discussions with my my study friends and my other colleagues, we're always like, man, that's just too much. I don't think that's really effective enough. And there's a lot of debate. There really is. I've seen people say that that's what ABA is all about, and that's not. There's a lot. There's a lot of cool stuff about applied behavior, and it's amazing. I'm an Office fan. I do like Michael Scott. Generalized condition Punishr is a lot like the generalized condition reinforcer. There's been a stimulus change. No and don't do that, and those scowls and those head shakes and those frowns, the quote unquote teacher look. We all have one. You're lying if you say you don't, because we all have one. That's condition Punishr. I mean, it's been paired and it's worked over time, and we repeatedly used it. That voice, that certain phrase, how our spouse says something to us, and we're like, okay, no problem. Not that we're always in trouble. I'm not always in trouble until I think of that, but it's repeatedly. It's repeatedly. Reprimands we use a lot. I think reprimands are the #1 go-to positive punishment, and I could be wrong. I don't have any research to back up that statement, but I know a lot of us hope that if we get on to somebody, it'll go away. And I think if we pair that with something, it might be more effective. But I'm speaking as a parent. The more I yell, the more it always doesn't work. Recovery from punishment. Just like recovery from reinforcement, to be honest with you. The situation is over with, and will that behavior resurge? Will it come back? Sometimes it does. A lot of times it does. I think, recover from punishment. The child's done. We punished them. We gave them that look. We sent them home from school, and the behavior should be fixed. Then it comes back the next day. Then it comes back the next hour. Then it comes back the next minute. So there's a lot of recovery, just like extinction. That behavior is going to eventually work its way back. The candy machine example. We've all done extinction. We don't get our bag of chips, and we beat the machine. We push the machine, pull the machine. We end up going back to that machine eventually. The kids eventually go back to those behaviors. Just like when a behavior is being punished, it also obtains reinforcement. Recovery responding from those earlier levels, they start to come back. Sometimes responding after punishment is discontinued, but not only will recover, but also briefly see the level at which it was occurring prior to punishment. A lot of words happening there, but in other words, not only will it come back, it'll come back way worse than before. So there's the recovery. I wish I had a slide right here with it, with a strategy built in for that, but that's just making you guys aware of, and myself aware of, what's fixing to happen. This is the problem with punishment. We always think that we weren't tough enough, or we weren't hard enough, or we didn't get upset enough. That's the reason why I didn't stay away. That's why I always think it's important to teach a replacement behavior. Instead of really, hunkering down on what you don't like, let's teach a behavior that's appropriate, that we do like, that we do want. At the PlayStation argument at my house, I'm sure it happens in many other households. Because we do have recovery from punishment a lot. That's probably a big term in our household. At least I'm starting to kind of put the application here. It came back. He yelled again at his friends. He got mad again. They took away his PlayStation. He got mad at his friends. But we got on to him. We yelled at him, but it came back. Maybe I should do a better job and teach better replacement behavior. But to be honest, I'm just letting him be 13 years old, and when I go home, my brain shuts off, and I don't think about behavior stuff. This is from Cooper, straight from Cooper. I call it Cooper. It's the big, huge book of applied behavior analysis. It states, recover from punishment is sometimes given as an argument against the use of punishment to decrease the behavior. Don't use punishment because the effect is only temporary. But of course, the same argument can be made for reinforcement. We always have that argument of reinforcement doesn't work. Punishment doesn't work. Punishment works. I'm not going to get that debate today, but if I don't add consistency to both of them, then they're both not really going to be effective. But I also have to use multiple ideas and strategies, and also learn the core of the problem. The strengthening effect of reinforcement decreases when the behavior occurs without the reinforcement. Just in a nutshell, you know, that we have to teach appropriate behaviors, because if we don't use consistency with reinforcement or punishment, it's all temporary. It all is. You know, I could do the best survey, the best preference assessment, the best anything. But if we're not consistent, you look right here, several keys to effectiveness are the same things that we did for reinforcement. A lot of the same things, similar things, all the way down. Immediacy. I'm not going to punish you 2 weeks later. I'm not going to reinforce you 2 weeks later. The intensity of it, the strength of it. I think with punishment, we get often really intense, because if we're super intense, then the behavior will super decrease. The schedule or frequency of punishment. Here's where punishment starts to kind of reach those ethical guidelines of I don't know, because if you have to be consistent and use reinforcement frequently in the beginning, then you also have to use punishment frequently and continuous in the beginning. What would you rather do? Reward the right behavior continuously and then fade off, or punish every time and then fade off? The availability of reinforcement for an alternative behavior. I just think of, let's just reinforce what we want. Let's reinforce those behaviors in the first place. Immediacy. This is the same similar argument that we just had with reinforcement. If I wait forever, if time is an issue, I mean, there is no stopwatch, and there is no, I got 3 seconds or 4 seconds. It is performance-based. But if you miss out, you could punish a behavior that was not meant to be punished. If you reinforce the wrong behavior, you could reinforce behavior that was meant to be punished. So immediacy is super important. That's why it's always important to, 3 seconds. And it's 3 seconds. The 3 second rule. 3 is a magic number. That's right. You have 3 seconds to reinforce. I guess you have 3 seconds to punish. I guess my kid's an enigma, because when he does come back to visit, we do have, better things do get better. Which is funny, because you start thinking about negative punishment, and COVID is taking him away from my household. And I know that he loves to be at my house, because now he can't wait to come back. And I wasn't trying to use negative punishment, and I wasn't trying to decrease the behavior, but being away made him appreciate how much you want to be at my house. And we'll find out, and in the weeks to come, if it decreases certain behaviors. My kid's not out of control or anything. I'm not trying to paint that picture. I had the same issues most people have with blended families. And that's most of what we deal with. The intensity of punishment is a big issue. I put that in the bottom there, because this is a lot of technical jargon right there. But the basic researchers examining effects of punishers reported 3 reliable findings: a correlation between the intensity, a negative correlation between the intensity of the punishing stimulus. But in other words, the intensity, forget all that right side, just basically the intensity of the punishment. What do we always think of when it comes to punishment? We always think intensity, how hard, and I'm gonna make sure they know what I'm gonna make sure I know. And the thing about intensity of punishment is, yeah, it does work, and yeah, you decrease that behavior. There is a correlation there, but there would also be one with reinforcement. Just a thought. Back to intensity of punishment on a more user-friendly slide. Recovery of responding to pre-punished levels is more likely to rebound when the punishment was slim. You yelled at them, but it didn't sink in, so it didn't work. Habituation to the punisher occurred. Habituation is like, happens so much, you tone it out. You're done. It's like drinking so much water. In the beginning, you needed water, but after you drank 14 bottles, you're tired. You're done with water. One more example for habituation would be living on a volcano island. At first, you're fearing for your life. Oh my gosh, there's a volcano. Guys, you see the volcano? And then 2 months later, not a big deal anymore. How many kids in our classroom, what we have to say and what we use as punishment, it don't faze them. It don't bother them anymore. The person can discriminate that the punishment contingency is no longer active. Our kids are smarter than we give them credit for. They know when it's really good, when it's still going on, and they know when you gave up. Same with reinforcement. They know. The punishment behavior is reinforced inadvertently. You punish the wrong behavior. Oops. That's really scary, the wrong behavior, because you're really working on that target behavior, that perfect desired behavior. And you ate their lunch and you missed it. They're not going to do it anymore. How many times do our own kids at our own house say, it just doesn't matter anymore. Whatever I say, it doesn't matter. Because sometimes they feel they get in trouble for doing the right thing and they get in trouble for doing the wrong thing. Staff training or lack of it. I'm not picking on anybody, I'm picking on myself. We go to all these trainings and we know what to do and how to do it. And then something happens and we just, we fold. That's okay. What you learn in training, if you didn't apply it, then you didn't have a chance to really let it sink in. Arkansas ideas are great. I love them, but I'm taking quizzes. If I go to a certain training and I'm getting something out of it more and more and more, then I can walk away with something. That's why I love Arkansas Behavior Specialists. They have on their website, they have another new training, and they have a checklist of some things that you could implement with those strategies to help you do things. That's why I tried a few checklists with staff this year. It's still work in the making. But after a certain time, when you want to implement something, you kind of have an idea what to do. Treatment integrity is important. It's not just a science word; it's super important. I always hear all the time about training. Well, I can tell you a bunch of classes I've done online. Doesn't mean I learned a whole lot. I could tell you a bunch of classes I physically have gone to. I can tell you what I didn't learn. It also takes us. What we put in, we put out. It could be another topic for a different day, self-management, which is really neat stuff. That's that and the human performance aspect of applied behavior is really cool because it looks at mixed martial arts and workplace and all that. Schedule and consistency of punishment. Continuous punishment produces more suppression than does intermediate punishment for as long as the punishment contingency is maintained. Kind of funny here, continuous punishment, constantly punishing. So when you take that away and you discontinue that punishment, are we going to have a recovery responses, or is it going to go away altogether completely? They're saying you're going to have a more rapid recovery of responses the more continuous the punishment is. Here's an example. Teenager likes to party, likes to go out there with their friends. Mom constantly gets onto him or her for going out with her friends. Mom and dad are away for the weekend. They're not being punished. So that response rapidly recovered. Avoidance, escape, a resurgence of those behaviors that were continuously punished. It gets really interesting. It really starts to wonder, does punishment really, it worked for me as a kid, and I see how it did work. But I can also look at the side effects and go, I can see how some ways it maybe didn't work for me. The target behavior is the inappropriate behavior, so we don't need to reinforce it. When you're looking at punishment, you want to make sure you're punishing the inappropriate. You don't want that behavior. On the flip side, with reinforcement, you want to make sure you reinforce the right behavior, the correct behavior. The effectiveness of punishment is modulated by the reinforcement contingencies maintaining the problem behavior. In other words, if reinforcement reinforces a problem, then we've all said those words before, then they'll keep doing it. Reinforcement maintain the problem behavior needs to be reduced, eliminated for punishment to be more effective. I think we all understand that. Make sure you target the behavior you want to have punished. I'm a flip side guy here on this slide. I like reinforcement. I still have turn to punishment. I still like punishment, but I don't want to over punish. I want to find a good mixture. There's side effects of punishment, and we're going to have some individual slides for this. Like I said earlier, aggression breeds aggression. There's emotional and aggressive reactions. There's also coercion. I think coercion happens a lot in our typical households. You know, your child got mad at you, you got mad at him, and back and forth. Been there. You know, I said earlier that modeling and imitation isn't so much do this, do this, do this. It's learning a behavior through modeling that you never knew before. Imitation is a really scary thing. When I really started digging into my research for my classes, I mean, some of the things that people do, that complete buy-in, they saw things. There's a study where this kid was in this clinic and he was like beating up this little like circus doll because someone modeled to him physical, emotional aggressiveness. He was doing what he saw. You know, and I know we had that argument again. Well, at home, they see this. They do. They do see and they do hear. You know, so when we have a 3- and 4-year-old that says inappropriate words, it's not a shocker because we know where it's coming from. But aggressive behavior is no different. You know, they didn't wake up one day and just, oh, I know how to talk this way, or I know how to act this way. Aggression breeds aggression. Extreme punishment could also create escape and avoidance. You have become an unpleasant stimulus. You become something unpleasant, and they want to avoid. I don't have the best relationship with my parents because we've never had the best relationship. I'm being really honest here. And I got older, so I've learned to escape and avoid. You know, I don't want that unpleasantness all the time. I love my parents. I love them with all my heart, and when I can see them, I see them. I can talk to them. But we all have people in our lives that we always say amputate the limb and cut them off, and we don't. It's harder with family, but we escape those people. We avoid those people. You know, we don't want to hear their negativity. We don't want to hear their angriness and all that stuff. We don't want to be around it. Those are people that we avoid. Now they're punished. I mean, it makes sense. Behavior contrast. We're gonna spend some time talking about that here in a second. Behavior contrast is a real deal. If mom is hardcore at the house, you can't even lift a finger without doing something, and then you go to school and he's going crazy, yeah, he couldn't do it at home. You know, mom and dad are just, you know, you can't go out and party with your friends, you can't go drinking, can't do this, and they're gone for the weekend. You're gonna have a good, you know, can't catch what I'm saying? Over here, it's really enforced that person's gone, and it substitute teacher day. Come on, there's the behavior contrast. That person's gone. Punisher reinforcers are gone too. Punishment may involve modeling of undesirable behaviors. It's the right thing to do at the moment, but I'm modeling behaviors that are inappropriate. I think I've already said this. I'm modeling inappropriate behaviors. Punishment isn't perfect and creates harmful effects, which is the reason why applied behavior analysis investigates reinforcement strategies first. We use punishment, but we like reinforcement first. Physical and emotional reactions, we just said a minute ago. These arise from aggression. Aggression breeds aggression. Escape and avoidance. What we talked about earlier, we always think negative reinforcement. I mean, we are talking about punishment, but this is still kind of negative, this is still kind of the same lines here. Is there a teacher or someone that we've avoided, as kids? We didn't want to talk to them all the time. They're kind of unpleasant, and we just got tired of getting in trouble all the time. I just didn't want to be around them, a boss or a coworker. I get tired of, someone always giving me a hard time, so I'm just going to avoid you. I'm just going to escape from you. I want to keep my office door closed. I keep my door mostly open. It's always been closed because of these Zooms. But there are people that we avoid. And we're lying to ourselves. We said that we don't avoid certain people, but we do. We really do. These people are constantly negative. They spend lots, and we don't spend a lot of time with those people. The behavior contrast. Rogue ABA had a great example. That's why I put it up here. Thumb sucking. Mom and dad are just quit sucking your thumb, and they're just on them, on that little boy to not do it. So he stops doing it at home. Then he goes to school, and the behavior just like triples. And the teacher says something. That's why it's really important, and a lot of us always say it. We want behaviors to generalize. If we have something going great at school, and the parents are willing to work with us, and a lot of them are, then that skill will generalize. That's why it's important for parents to always be on the same page. I know me and my ex-wife, we don't get along sometimes, but a lot of things we do agree on, and it's our little boy. And we try to have a lot of things on the same page when it comes to him from our homes. Even with my wife, with our up here. The substitute teacher theory is kind of my favorite one, I mean, it's true. It's just the behavior contrast. That teacher, they have structure, they have routines, they have everything just figured out, and they're gone. And the classroom knows that they're not going to get in trouble. That substitute teacher is they're just there. They're treading water for the day, and everyone misbehaves. Parents are gone for the weekend, and kids throw a party. Well, mom and dad aren't there to enforce. They're not there to get onto them. That's a behavior contrast. Punishment may be overused. Like I said before several times today, it can be used correctly, but it can be used inappropriately. The side effects we talked about, the fear, the doubt, the aggression, there's actually more than what I just shown. There's a lot more than that. And like I said before, there's a lot of reasons why the BACB board really wants to look toward, not using harmful punishers all the time. There's a big reason why they push toward reinforcement strategies. And it doesn't always work. So sometimes we do go to punishment. I have a video we're going to watch here in a little bit that really talks about sensory extinction. Sensory extinction is a form of punishment, and it worked. And I'll let the guy in the video explain more about it. Negative reinforcement may be a reason for widespread use of reliance upon punishment in child rearing, education, society. We think about punishment, but negative reinforcement's really going on here. I don't like how that child's behaving. I don't like how my child's acting at the house. I don't like how these things are going on, and I get rid of that unpleasantness, and I want to keep doing it. We think punishment's always, and it does work. I'm not trying to stay on both sides of the fence here, but it does work. But reinforcement does too. Sometimes punishment is also can be used in the form of personal. You take things personal. You get upset. Like animal care training, we talked about how sometimes we take things personal and we overreact, and we think about the tools that we have and we just overly use them. When a teacher delivers a reprimand or other aversive consequence to a child for misbehaving, the immediate effect is temporary. The problem just temporarily goes away, but then it comes back. And the thing about punishment also is too, I know I said earlier, is it's always viewed upon as not strong enough. I just got on to you. I just told you that. So I'm gonna have to go a little harder. I gotta think a little, maybe my intensity. Did I deliver it hard enough? Did I say it hard enough? Did I use the right Punisher? We start to step up our game. Then it turns into a one up, one up, one up, one up, one up, and it's just bam. The termination of this aversive stimulus serves as negative reinforcement for the teacher's behavior. Like I said earlier, when it comes to school suspension, when we are getting rid of the child, we are getting rid of an aversive, unpleasant thing for us. And it's probably more than likely also reinforcing for him or her. Positive punishment interventions. There's actually a whole bunch of them, but I'm not going to go through every single one of them. I just kind of want to go over the main ones that I think are super cool. Response blocking. We got a video on the next slide. It's about the sensory extinction thing. Response blocking is physically blocking a response, and this is I kept trying to push with my verbal intervention class. We can't block and do our karate moves to our kids because of their age. And it's going to look like we're fighting back or we're fighting at them. But if they're pulling your hair, we're going to block it. If Johnny is putting things in his mouth, we're going to block it. If hand clapping, sometimes it's sensory. They like the feeling and the sensation. We could put gloves on and interrupt that. That's when we start to get into Pika and all those other things. But we're trying to block the response, and sometimes, I'm just guilty. I want to put a chew chain or all kinds of things, and they work. They do work. Those items work. But sometimes we're blocking that response is just as good. Putting socks on someone's hands for fingernail biting. They can't physically reach their fingernails. We're blocking that response. And the video, I can't wait to get to it. Reprimands are, in my opinion, the most common form, because we always like to say no, stop, and don't do that, and then we decrease. And sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. Response blocking is also used for self-injurious behaviors. The thing about self-injurious behaviors is we forget that sometimes it's self-reinforcing. If we have a child who has sensory issues and he hits his head against the wall and it feels good, he's probably going to keep doing it. So, that's when you start to, that's why they have, sometimes some people have helmets. It's really response blocking. We're blocking that response. There's a lot of different things. Eye poking, we're going to block the eye poke. Hand mouthing, we're going to block the hand mouthing. It really is what it says. You're physically blocking the response. And I really can't wait to share this. This guy is, I know I shared him a while back. This is Brett Da Vinci or Devani or whatever. He's on the West Coast, on the East Coast, in New Jersey. Him and his brother are just amazing. His brother trains UFC fighters using behavior concepts. That's cool. And this is his brother.
Educators, behavioral analysts, anyone who's interested in understanding behavior, especially those that work with learners on the autism spectrum. So, as you probably know, my son is on the severe end of the autism spectrum. And what I wanted to share with you was that he had a behavior that was just really loud clapping. So this is about 9 years ago. It was very disruptive. It impeded his ability to go in the community. It impeded a lot of things. We couldn't go out into a movie theater. He's going to be clapping really loud. So basically, my son Ben would have these really loud clapping noises. Our functional analysis and our functional behavior assessment indicated that the clapping was because it felt good. It was internal or automatic reinforcement, self-stimulatory behavior. So in other words, he would clap in the absence of any socially mediated stimuli. So he's going to do it whether you're around or not, whether you reinforce it, whether you react to it, he's going to clap. So after exhausting many positive strategies with Ben, and none of them working, all these things we tried to reinforce incompatible behaviors, nothing seemed to compete with the clapping and the loud noise and the feeling that he got out of it. So what we did is we did a sensory extinction procedure. So those ABA geeks like me, the term would be sensory extinction. and we got different approvals, and I had another behavior analyst, so that's not a conflict of interest, implement this. I had another behavior analyst and other members in the community to take a look at what I was doing to make sure it wasn't inappropriate, because I don't want to be a conflict as his father, and they also approved it. So what we did is we came up with a sensory masking procedure where he wore a glove. So whenever he started the clapping, he would get a warning like, Ben, stop, or the glove. And then if he continued the clapping, we just put a glove on his hand. So what would happen was he would clap, and the clapping did not produce that automatic reinforcement and that sound that was so pleasurable to him. It resulted in decreases in clapping. Number one, because it didn't produce reinforcement, because it was muffled. Number two, he didn't like the feeling of the glove being on his hand. And what's kind of funny about that is it was great. It was awesome. We were able to fade the glove. Pretty soon we just had the glove sitting in our pockets, and he might look at the glove and decide not to clap. He might be starting to clap, see that you have the glove, and then stop, which was great. So we never actually found a replacement behavior for that, but that would have been optimal. Now, what was interesting was that my mom, for the first time, because it's my stepson, my mom for the first time met my stepson, Ben. And we had a little family function. It was for a birthday, and he was doing the clapping, so we had to put the glove on temporarily. My mom saw him with a glove, didn't understand that he had limitations, and he came over and put his hand out because he wanted her to take off the glove. But she was like, "Oh, Ben, so great to meet you," and shook his hand. And we all kind of, it was kind of funny that we had to explain to her the deficit. But Ben tremendously improved with that. His quality of life was tremendous, and he was able to do so many more things because he wasn't out in public making really loud noises. He was able to experience things like that. Really improved his life.
That guy is really cool. Yes, I've been discovering more and more of his videos. Haven't seen all of them yet, but he has some great stuff. Autism Live has some good stuff. I think I shared a few of their things. There's a lot of stuff out there. Be careful on the source, of course. I've discovered a lot of people. There's multiple sources. Steve Ward was the guy that I've been talking to this week. He does a lot of shaping stuff. He's the author of a book called Calm Counts. There's some neat stuff. I'm interested in reading that book because I heard a lot of good stuff. Behavioral Karma is what this guy's brother wrote, and it's supposed to be really good. I'm interested in that too. But there's just a lot of stuff out there, short snippets. It's amazing how much is out there and how many people. That's the thing about ABA. We're looking for a socially important behavior. I mean, teaching the clarinet is probably not the most socially important behavior. So we're looking for behaviors that are important to benefit the client's life. Clapping in certain places is not beneficial for him. So there's a lot of socially important stuff, and it's just mind-blowing. Redirection. I think I gave the big spiel last 3 days in handle care training. Redirection is not simply saying stop doing that. Stop. Quit doing that over there. It's being proactive. It's being there before it happens. If he's having a rough morning and he's getting on to somebody and he's in block center and you can kind of see it kind of building, pull him out of there, get him to stand on the water table, and let's give him a different activity. It's not stopping it after it happened. That's not redirection. Redirection is being ahead of the curve. The definition is a procedural variation of response blocking that includes interrupting stereotypic behavior at its onset and redirecting the individual to a high probability behavior. In other words, you interrupt the behavior and you put them in a behavior that they're probably going to do. High probability. Or, in other words, catch the behavior before it happens with a more alternative, appropriate behavior. Yelling is not redirection. Cannot say that enough. It is not redirection. Then we start to get into our overcorrection and repeated practice. I think as teachers, I think we have done these things to the core. I know I was really bad when I taught third grade. We're going to have a straight line. This line is going to be straight, and it's going to be great. This is repeated practice. I want to kind of give you the headway. Repeated practice. So we're going to practice our straight line, and we're going to work on our straight line and make sure we don't ever mess up that it's a straight line. So that would probably be more negative practice. I was meaning for to be positive and appropriate ways to walk. I've learned in preschool, I'm just happy we're in a somewhat straight line and we're somewhat going to where we need to be going. I'm just picking a better battle. I do like traveling hands. I do like bubbles. I do like all that stuff. I know certain sources will say it's not natural for a child. Well, we'll get there. We'll get to a more natural reinforcer, but I like those things. Overcorrection is the corner over here. I left my shoes out, or we dropped these little cars everywhere. So we're going to pick up all the cars, and we're going to probably clean up the entire floor. It's kind of like that, if I came in the house, here's a better example. I come home and it's raining outside, and I get some mud on the kitchen floor. And my wife says something to me about the mud there, and I'm going to sweep up the dirt, and then I'm going to mop the floor, and I'm going to clean that area to a T. Versus, she's going to make sure I overcorrect it to make sure I don't do that again. We do that a lot with our kids. I think I have. We're going to do the whole thing from scratch and make sure that we get everything right the way we're supposed to be. There are several different types, 3 different types to be exact: restitutional, positive practice, and negative practice. Another example for our group would be they make a mess, they clean it up. That's a great practice, positive practice, because they need to know how. This would be a great first in thing. You could, first we'll clean up and not very desired, and then we reach the behavior they want to the next thing. Or it's just part of our schedule. That's just reality. It's part of our schedule. But we need to practice. I don't think there's any harm in positive practice because we've said it several times as teachers. We've said it several times, period. If you don't practice, you don't know how to do it. And that's pretty much what we do in a school year. We teach, review, and practice. And then we teach, review, and practice. We just keep repeating those cycles. Positive punishment interventions. This is a big one that I think I used in school. I think I still use it with my little kids. Johnny gets out of line. He gets fronts or backs from somebody. I don't know who it is. And we pull him out of line and we make him go to the back of the line. He lost his cool spot and now he's at the back. We're going to turn this simple correction into an overcorrection. This is probably the best example of this intervention. Just something simple all the way. Guidelines for using punishments. We're kind of reaching the close here, guys. We'll be a lot earlier than the last several. We're going to use a variety of punishers, just like we use a variety of reinforcers. We're going to use, different things work. Habituation, like I said earlier, it's living on that volcanic island, and you're like, oh my gosh. It's even COVID. At first, we're all like, oh man, I gotta wear a mask, and now we're like, oh, we gotta wear a mask. It's weird social norms, but we're getting used to it. That's habituation. And punishers and reinforcers are the same way. If you like bologna, and I told you bologna, you found out you love bologna, and I'm gonna buy you a bologna sandwich every day for 2 months. I'm pretty sure you're gonna be tired of it after the 14th day. So that's. We also don't want to overdo it either. But habituation is a real deal, and it happens a lot in classrooms. It gets super loud in there, and they just get used to it. It gets super whatever happens in there, and the kids get used to it. We're also going to deliver a punisher at the beginning of the sequence. We're going to punish inappropriate behavior as soon as it begins. Why can't we reinforce when it happens at the beginning? We're going to punish the behavior that is intended to be punished. And if he performs a desirable behavior and it is punished, then we're probably decreasing the wrong behavior. But it's just like reinforcement. You're going to catch those things that are supposed to be caught. Cannot say the word consistency enough. Punish each instance of behavior initially. We don't always catch everything. That's the reinforcement or the punishment thing. I know COVID has made our classroom sizes smaller and life has gotten better on that end, but we don't always catch everything. So if you're going to use punishment, you better be consistent. I always think of just in period, in general, your room needs to have structure. Your room needs to be organized. Your room needs to have everything the way it needs. Punishment is more effective when the punisher follows their response. A response is an instance of behavior. The consistency is especially important when a punishment intervention is first implemented. That's important for reinforcing. Consistency. I didn't find the coolest graphic for combine, but that was with punishment. We want to combine something with punishment. Punishment alone doesn't work. It works with other things. Your extinction and your proactive antecedent strategies, deferential reinforcement. I used to be scared of those words and scared of those terms, but they're basically, what are you looking at reinforcing? Are you looking at reinforcing everything except the behavior they're doing? Are you looking at reinforcing something other than that behavior they're doing? So differential reinforcement, what are you reinforcing? That would be a great conversation for another day, to be honest. And there's ethical considerations. When is punishment, when can it be used right? When can it be used wrong? This isn't a special education thing entirely, because least restrictive is always important. When we do applied behavior analysis, or we do anything, but if you're going to apply behavior analysis something, they have the right to effective treatment. And so if all I'm doing and coming to your classroom and just enforcing punishment, hey. Okay. And you have to make sure, as another state person, I lost my train of thought. Effective treatment. Make sure you're using effective treatment. Kind of wild today. I'm not used to having so many people in here. Here's are the books where I got everything from. I want to show y'all one more thing before I go. Like I found the visual analysis book, and I thought it was super cool, and I want to share that. A lot of stuff for today came from Cooper. The book's at my house right now, so I can't share it. What it looks like. This guy's good too. Behavior for Lasting Change. He's easier to understand than Cooper. And then the next guy is ABA Visual Language. We found out today that he's not $5 anymore. He got expensive, so it's worth it. This book is so worth it because it breaks down the concepts in nice little pictures and coloring areas. It helps me out. So it's a great book. I want to pull this. Can everyone see this? All right. This is the book that I found earlier this summer. It's called ABA Visualized. I got the website pulled up. If y'all want me to share that with you, it will not bother me at all. This book is fantastic. I'm really excited about learning more about it, and I'm thinking about buying it. And it has a lot of cool stuff. Let me find a good page for us. Look at that. Here's just one little example right here with pictures. Identify a trigger, and then after the environment, and then it shows you with a visual and a picture and description what to do. There is a parent book there. Let me see. There's a parent, and there's a homeschooling one. There's a telehealth one. Yeah, there's just all kinds of good stuff. But I'm probably going to get this book. I could handle $30. I mean, I could swing it. I'm not making money off this or trying to sell you guys. I just wanted to share this because this book is amazing because of the visuals, because of the explanations, and I want to share this. If I read this book, I'd probably have a better way of sharing it, and a better testimony for you guys of how awesome it is. hear me? Okay. It says my speaker's not working.